going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're talking about the top 3 keys to multifamily property management. Gonna share just a few scenarios and feedback that I've learned from personally managing our 18 unit down in Panama City, Florida area. And just really, you can take these and hold these to heart when it comes to single family investing as well with rental properties. Number one, you definitely want to interview your property managers or your management company. And I got one of our houses, single family side. We have just a single, just a one person that manages the property. She doesn't have a big company, and she does a phenomenal job. But on the apartment building, you probably want a property management company that has all of the supporting functions that you need when it comes to leasing, for the maintenance requests, all of those type of things that kind of go with the management side of it that help. They have the big software, whether it's Appfolio or if it's another one that they use, whereas that you can get monthly reports. They have the software where you can get a lot of insight and you can get your data, whereas that you can kind of assess what's going on with the property when it comes to the asset management. Whereas that when you're doing the property management, it's one thing, but as the owner and you have the property manager that's doing the day in and day out functions, you as the owner are performing the asset management piece, whereas that you're working with them to make sure that they have your best interest, that they're executing your business plan for the property, and that way that they make sure that you remain profitable. And so that's one of the big things, and going through the PM interview. I know with us, we actually interviewed 3 different companies before we settled on the one. And one of the biggest things was the software that they used. Whereas that I knew I wasn't going to be out of the area. I wanted to be able to trace my metrics and understand those. And then number 2 was my vendors, which I'll talk a little bit about that. Whereas that we had control over our vendors that we wanted to use, since we have relationships, since we have our single family renovation business there. We have a lot of relationships with tradesmen and vendors that we wanted to use, whereas that we can keep the maintenance expense low as possible. So definitely going through the PM interview was good. Networking with other investors, asked for referrals. That's how we kind of ended up with 2 of those. We got referrals from other apartment investors in the area, and it worked out well. And so I think right now, the PM is executing. We've had, one really challenging issue, especially through COVID, that was a challenge, and manage. And I can talk through a lot of it because I self-managed for 5 months with the property manager. So we bought it. I self-managed for the first 5 months. I relocated, left the area, and then I handed it over to the property management company that won kind of the top of the 3 that we interviewed. And so I saw it, boots on the ground, saw it firsthand, and it's a challenge. And so I respect them and understanding the challenges that they have to go through. But it helps me ask way more informed questions, and I know the property in and out because I was there, and doing the initial maintenance request when we first took over with the deferred maintenance that hadn't been taken care of. That I know the property in and out, which is great. And a lot of owners, you don't get the chance to get that intimate knowledge of what's going on with your asset. But that's one of the things that I encourage you guys early on to be hands-on, to dig into the numbers and understand, hey, what it is that the property managers are doing on the property, whereas that way you kind of have a really good grasp of how your asset is performing. And that kind of goes into number 2, the monthly reporting. If you don't have if you don't have the metrics, then you can't measure it, and you can't change what you don't measure. So that's one of the big things, that you got to make sure that your property manager is properly communicating with you. Their reports are timely. That way you can foresee issues that are current going on, and you can manage the trends to kind of understand, hey, so and so didn't pay for these 2 months. Have you talked to them? Have you talked to them and understand their plan? Did they lose a job, or what's going on? Is it temporary? Do we have a plan in place for them to catch up? And kind of understanding those things, or hey, if somebody's rent increase. And I think the other pieces with the monthly reporting is understanding, hey, what's the cadence? Do you need to meet with them monthly? Phone call, in person, email? Do you care if do you want them to pick the tenants that submit approved applications, or let them choose? And it depends on how involved you want to be with your property. And smaller properties, yeah, you could probably do that, but 100 unit, you probably couldn't be as involved with a lot of the day in day decisions, and you shouldn't be. But you got to understand that, hey, these costs comes with a trade. If you go totally hands off, you may end up with a few bills at the end of the month. Like, hey, I wouldn't have authorized that if I had been making the decision. So it's a give and take, and I think that's one of the things to understand when you're going through the interview is, hey, what the monthly report, and hey, how much are our occupancy rate? That's the number one thing we look at is our occupancy rate. Well, hey, we got vacant units that are sitting for too long, then we're not making money. And then if we have units coming up for renewal, hey, how do we incentivize those people to stay in the unit so we don't have to take a unit down and turn it over, which is one of the most expensive costs, is turning a unit over for a new tenant, or I'm sorry, a new resident. I like to refer to people who occupy our dwellings as residents and not tenants. But you got to bring in a new resident, and so you try to limit that by offering incentives or whatever it may be that you can. And so that's where that partnership with the right PM, and you kind of understand, hey, the metrics and the numbers, whereas that, hey, we got 5 units coming up next month for renewal. How are we going to measure success? Are we going to incentivize them? Are we giving concessions? What are other properties doing that you guys are managing, and understanding what other owners are doing right now in regards to concessions? And so it's just all those metrics that it helps you to be that more lethal when it comes to executing everything you need to do to remain profitable and stay on point with your business plan. And so I think that's one of the big things you're doing, whereas that you know your metrics that you look for. We can shoot another video like, hey, what metrics are actually important, and the metrics that we use to manage our apartment. And then the third one is your vendors. To control your expenses, you got to have vendors that aren't the highest priced vendors in town, because that can control how much money, how much cash flow that you actually get every month by how much you're spending on expenses. And so you have capital, capex, major repairs, stuff that happens with the HVACs. The flooring gets too old, you got to replace the flooring. The roof goes down, you need to eventually replace the roof. But other things like, just a routine maintenance for calling a plumber out, or things that a handyman can fix, whether, hey, the knob fell off the kitchen cabinet, or it's like, hey, we got a window pane that's leaking, or we need touch up paint here, there's a hole in the door. So things like that, where you can have a handyman that's reasonably priced, maybe paying about an hour versus just, hey, you're paying $100 just for the plumber to show up, and then plus the labor to do any work. So things like that, whereas the vendors can make or break you. And so that's one of the relationships with the property manager. They allowed us to bring our own chosen vendors that we had on for HVAC, my own handyman for the property, also our plumber that we use for the single family side. So those tradesmen that we normally do. And I think one of the cool story right now, we got quotes for $315 and $400 every 2 weeks. So we would have been paying $630 a month for lawn care service. And I was like, I know we weren't paying that before. And so, of course, over the winter, when I left winter season, you're not cutting grass. So, we hadn't really addressed that yet since we've been gone. And so I called my guy up. Hey, it's that time of the year, ready to get back going. And so they had a conversation. Well, they, in the past, him and the property management company had fell out, whereas that they were delaying his money. Like, well, hey, the operator, the owner hadn't paid us yet. They hadn't got the money in the account, so we can't pay you. And so they were delaying his payments for 2-3 weeks. And so he didn't want to deal with them again. And so we worked out a deal. It was like, hey, because he told me he would cut for $175 every 2 weeks versus $315 or $400. I was like, hey, we'll work it out. I'll pay you directly. Don't worry about them. And I told them, hey, don't worry about him. I'm gonna pay him, take care of him directly. And he's paying, $175 a week. Every 2 weeks to cut the lawn. So something like that, where is that I was involved. I knew, different vendors, and we had used a guy before, so I wasn't gonna go to theirs because he was that much more expensive. Whereas that, in the long run, it saved us a lot of money. So that's a cool story. Just here recently, what we did with the spring with getting that contract back up for the landscaping. But it's things like that, that you have to manage the day in, day out, pieces of it. Right now, whether it's somebody that didn't pay their rent, you know, the judge makes a ruling and then they get evicted, or they turn the keys in before you evict them, and now they're harassing you as the owner because they think you did something to them wrong, or and just whether they're calling your job, or sending emails. Real life, I won't go into details, but that's something that I'm dealing with right now. With that is unfortunate, with the situation, with the decisions that were made with the property management and everything. And then for me being, self-managing for that time frame and actually knowing the people, it was tough. And especially get to the point where, somebody's calling your job, and, and making harassment, and making threats and all that you have to deal with. But that's part of being a landlord, and, being an owner, that sometimes, it comes with the territory, unfortunately, and you have to deal with those problems and situations, and you become better for it, and it makes it worthwhile. Whereas that, hey, you can't have a testimony without a test, and you can't take, you gotta have, it's gonna rain some days, and it's not gonna always be sunshine and unicorns. There's gonna be challenges, but we have to know why we're doing what we're doing. We're impacting and helping the single mothers come in here. That is worthwhile. We're helping people build generational wealth through learning about real estate and the benefits of it. And sometimes you're gonna have challenges and situations you got to deal with, but you got to just know why you're doing. I always tell people, point back to your why, with why you start doing something, because when it gets tough, because life's gonna hit you, it's gonna get tough. You know why you're doing it, and you can press through, and there's no need to get stopping in the mud. When you get in the mud, why stop in the mud when you can be up here in the dry area, if you only keep progressing and making progress every day. So just wanted to shoot this property management for the multifamily side, share that with you, and we'll do some other videos talking about metrics and how we actually do the asset management piece. But always make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the thumbs up, and then drop any comments for any question you guys may have down below. And I will see you on the next video.